This film was born out of a headline and a viral moment I saw in the news. And I felt like I didn't even have a choice, really. I saw this image and I was obsessed and felt like I had a way to deconstruct that viral video in a way that was deeper than just race or religion, but telling the story from an existential point of view. I understood that there was an opportunity through what I saw in the news to tell a very human story about how that headline happened. And I was very curious about who this, who this character was, And it's interesting because that is how the origin of my interest in this field began, because there's another film that is the prequel to You Resemble Me that was that viral video, but actually You Resemble Me, I was on the ground in France and I was on the location when when the headline of You Resemble Me, the real story of You Resemble Me happened, and I actually reported on the news this piece of information that was incorrect, that traveled the world. And so my mission as the filmmaker was to go beyond the incorrect reporting of the news and to understand actually who this woman was. I reported that Hasna was involved in this in a news story in a specific way, in a very sensationalist way. And I found her real family. I spent over the course of 6 years with them, embedded with the community, doing over 360 hours of interviews, and I wrote a script from those real interviews. So the origin of the story was to take a real news headline and deconstruct it and bring a human experience to this story. I did over 360 hours of interviews, as I said, but even with 6 years and all these interviews and embedding with the real sister and the real friends and all that, I never really met Hasna, the real woman. I will never truly know who she was. I never looked in her eyes. And another layer to it is that everything I did understand from the interviews I did was that she was a very fragmented woman, that she was struggling deeply with her sense of self. And actually that the fact that she didn't have a sense of who she was the reason why she radicalized. That's the reason why she threw her arms, she threw herself into the arms of ISIS, because she wanted someone to tell her, I can help you understand who you are. You are enough as you are. You don't need to shapeshift and interchange between different faces in order to find a sense of belonging and connection to other people. You are fine as you are. You're not broken. We will heal you. And so this was very fascinating to me. The idea that to a certain extent, all of us even can have different faces and can change who we are just to feel like we can belong, and this is also a symptom of trauma. And I think Hasna was struggling deeply with her mental health. And for me, when mass shootings or violence happens by someone who is white, a white man, the media very quickly goes into, let's talk about the mental health. When someone who is black or brown commits an act of violence, we don't afford them a mental health issue. We go straight into dehumanizing them and having that community pay the price of that person's action. So it was very important for me to highlight the mental health truth of this story. And then of course, as I said, this is a news story first, right? And the news, which is supposed to be like the mecca of, telling the story of terror, this is the right medium where we can discuss these issues, is very sensationalist. And they were so eager to get the headline out that they called her 3 different women. And they called her sister Hasna, So I was like, let me flip that media error and allow 3 women who come from a similar background as Hasna, women who are Muslim and Arab and living in the West, who are also trying to find harmony in their identity, let them step into her shoes and feel the weight of what it felt like to be Hasna. And find the similarity also. This was the purpose of the film. This is why the film is called You Resemble Me, because she's dehumanized to us through the news, but actually this is a film about how Hasna is every woman, every human being, just trying to find a sense of belonging and consideration in this world. I was very fortunate to be a student of Spike Lee's. I studied at NYU. The film program brought me into Spike Lee's classroom, and he was such a huge supporter and advocate of the story being told. And at a time where, there were individuals who were maybe afraid of this narrative, he was very adamant that this film is on the right side of history because we need to understand who these people are in order to solve this problem, in order to have the right conversation and have the right solutions. And the solution to solving terrorism isn't militarization or policing, it's actually investing in mental health, in the communities where there's a high percentage of people and youth who get disenchanted and feel like they don't have a sense of belonging in society. So that was how Spike Lee was involved, and Spike Jonze, as I said, I used to be a journalist, and when I approached Vice back in the day, I met Spike Jonze because he was the creative director of the company, and we formed a very strong connection. And he also, he was very supportive of, the fractured approach to Hasna, because, his filmmaking takes bold leaps and can be non-traditional, and being John Malkovich is absurdist. So I was very happy to have such strong mentors who were guardians of the importance of the story and my freedom as a filmmaker to tell the story on my own terms. I am exceptionally lucky that I got such a talented team, and a team that I love. To be able to work on such a difficult film, but to be working with a team of people who give everything. And my two little girls who play young Mariam and Hasna are truly sisters, and their bond on the screen is undeniable. And it's interesting because I feel like they have a different context, but still it's they are the young Mariam and Hasna of today. And we have to make space for these young girls to have opportunities and succeed, because they have a lot to offer, and they shouldn't be dismissed or told, well, there isn't a place for you as an artist. They've been struggling in France to get opportunities, which is crazy to me, because it's their talent is so clear. And, we did lots of rehearsals, but they have a natural knack for this, so I was very fortunate to work with them. And for me, the casting was important, that I was casting people who had a real connection point to the story. So like Mariam and Hasna, they're real sisters. They really are coming from a Muslim, Algerian, Western identity, and I met them in the street casting in one of the neighborhoods that Hasna grew up in. So that was important to me as well. And my adult Hasna, we have Muna Soelam and Sabrina Wazani, and I also play one of the Hasnas as well. And so Muna, she also is a great talent, and she's a Muslim Arab woman who's having to contend with her identity in France, and she it's funny because she was working at one of the restaurants, I believe, that were attacked in the November 13th attacks. So she also has a real connection point to this, No one came in without any connection. Everyone had a personal understanding of how important the story was. And Sabrina, who's a wild talent, she plays more of the profane Hasna. She, the party girl, the one who's the one who the news said, oh, skanky Hasna, She grew up in a neighborhood like Hasna's, and she says, if I wasn't given an opportunity to succeed in France as an actor, I don't know what I would have done, because I had a lot of energy and I had to put it somewhere so I can understand a woman like Hasna. And this was important to me. And myself, I think my reason for also stepping into Hasna's shoes is because I lived so deeply with the family, and when I first approached them, the reason they let me in is because the mother said, you remind me of Hasna, and they would be they would call me Hasna. It was, and it was not lost on me that, like, even though Hasna grew up in different circumstances than I did, that there are things I could relate to as her, you know? And so there was this emphasis of really of helping the audience understand that she was more than just one thing. We tried to call her just one thing, but she was a woman of many faces. And as a child, there was a chance because she had her sister. And that bond, that love, if maybe we had protected it, maybe there could have been a different result today.